All the life we know today, even the simplest of microbes, shares the same biology. We are all from the same tree of life. But we know our incredibly complex biology could not have been the first form of life on Earth. What was life like before the life we know? Finding that life might help us understand how we got here. And the answer could be right under our noses.
All life so far studied is the same life, but it's never been clear to me that you can't have more than one form of life on the planet at the same time. I think it's entirely likely that we share this planet with a genuinely alien type of life. Alien not because it necessarily came from space, but because it belongs to a different tree of life from you and me. Remarkably enough, it turns out that nobody has really thought to look for life on Earth as we don't know it.
Paul Davies is one of the world's leading cosmologists. He's the first to admit he's not a biologist, but he's not afraid to venture into their territory and ask questions no one else thought to ask.
We don't know how a mix of non-living chemicals turns itself into a living thing. We don't even know whether this is a very likely sequence of events or a very unlikely sequence of events. But let's suppose it's very likely. Then shouldn't it have happened many times over right here on Earth?
Paul's term for possible homegrown alien life is the shadow biosphere, and he has a plan for how we might discover it.
We could look at places on Earth where conditions are so extreme, so harsh, they're beyond the reach of life as we know it, to see if there's some hardy alien type of microorganism living there.
So the life that we might find in, let's say, this much mud, we could have billions of different microbes that are as different as you and I are to a mosquito. In fact, we're more closely related to mosquitoes than they are to each other. That's how different these microbes are.
Felisa works at the U.S. Geological Survey in Menlo Park, California, but it's NASA's astrobiology program that pays her to study mud.
So one of the things I always do when I go to a new environment, regardless of where it is in the world, I take samples to set up a Winogradsky column.
A Winogradsky column is like a potted history of the Earth, a breeding ground for all kinds of strange microbes.
You take your sample of mud and you just fill, say, a glass jar, and you put it in the window. You'll see over time beautiful colors evolve in this Winogradsky column.
The progression of colors reveals distinct types of microbes that are inhabiting the column. Every type of microbe needs specific elements to survive. Some feed on sunlight, others on carbon. More exotic bugs feed on sulfur. But one mud sample Felisa took in 2009 revealed bugs stranger than she could have ever imagined. It came from a place that is highly toxic to almost all life on Earth, Mono Lake in California.
You can't talk about Mono Lake without being a little wistful. You feel like you're on another planet. It also contains very interesting compounds. Of particular interest to me was very high levels of arsenic. There's roughly 40,000 times or so the recommended arsenic from, say, the EPA. So it seemed to me logically that it could harbor, potentially, the vestiges of a shadow biosphere.
Felisa was not disappointed when she dug in the mud of Mono Lake. She did indeed find bugs that could survive these highly toxic doses of arsenic. Arsenic is an effective poison to most organisms because it closely resembles the element phosphorus. It tricks our cells into substituting one element for the other. Since phosphorus forms the backbone of DNA, its effects are devastating. But not the bugs that Felisa found. No matter how big a dose of arsenic she gave them, even many times more than the sky-high levels in Mono Lake, the microbes just kept on growing.
So these are microbes using what seems to be poison or toxic substances, and this biology is thriving. It can cope with hundreds of thousands of times what would be, say, an okay level of arsenic for a human to be exposed to.
Could this microbe be part of the shadow biosphere, our own homegrown alien life? Could its rules of biology be different from ours?
So perhaps, maybe they use a similar kind of DNA, only it's a little different. Maybe parts of it are different. Maybe they use similar proteins to ours, but maybe they use different amino acids than we do.
If arsenic atoms are somehow replacing phosphorus atoms in these microbes, then these bugs do not fit on our tree of life. They may not look any different from life as we know it, but these bugs could be the descendants of an entirely separate genesis.
So if we found something that even did something a little different, it could mean that here on Earth there was not just one tree of life, that there could be multiple trees of life. You know, humanity has spent an eternity thinking about the loneliness of being us. It would provide for us an example of something else, some other form of life that was also successful.